Oh, we're live now. Awesome.
That's
Welcome.
good.
That's good. All right, I'm gonna do this. This is how this podcast always starts, with us sharing stuff out.
Mhm.
Um, I don't really know why it is, but we want people to watch it.
Sure.
Oh, it won't share. All right, that's okay. Um, will it share? There, it will share. Tim, how you doing?
I'm
We're
doing
gonna
all
we're
well.
gonna chit chat before we get started, as they say. Let's see if you come up in my Facebook page as a tagged person. I don't know. No, you don't. How is that possible? All right, everybody, welcome to The Gear You Hear. I don't know what episode this is, but I am your humble episode 4. Is it really only episode 4,
It is
Scott?
only episode 4,
Why do I feel like I have been through an
or maybe
eternity with you?
it's 5. I don't know. I have that effect on people.
It's going to seem like 8 when we're done.
I'm your humble host, Emiko, and I'm here with Scott the Pedal Guy, and we are joined today by Master Amp Maker and Luthier, Tim Schroeder. Before we introduce Tim, I want to go over some house rules with everybody, so you understand. Those of you that are regular viewers, thank you for coming back. Those of you that are new viewers, awesome, welcome. If you're a regular viewer, obviously go get yourself some coffee for the next 20 seconds. House rules go like this. The Gear You Hear is an educational podcast dedicated to spreading awareness of different types of gear and the creative uses of them, artist stories, designer stories, and basic tips and tricks of the trade that I think are really interesting. We're trying to stay away from super tech stuff and go into person and human stuff, because that's really what makes everybody tick here. So we don't talk about politics. We don't talk about religion. There's no sexual harassment or harassment really of any kind. There's no bullying or trolling. So if you have a question, we encourage everybody to comment on the, on whatever platform you're watching this on. And there's really no question that's stupid. So please don't feel like if you're new and you're not sure about something, please do feel free to ask it. We're very encouraging. We want to educate. We want to encourage you all. And please connect with each other as well. That's really important. So without further ado, I'm going to say very nice things about Tim Schroeder, because he's a great guy. He's in Highland Park, Illinois. And he's sitting in Schroeder Amplification, Schroeder Hi-Fi HQ today, joining us. He is a phenomenal guitarist and amp designer and luthier, and also recently has gotten into the world of hi-fi curation. So we're going to talk about all of those things, and I know Scott has dug up some really cool things about Tim's history and the journey, and so we're going to talk about that as well. So welcome, Tim. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Scott, do you want to kick it off with I know you had a whole list of questions.
I'm kind of just seeing where it all goes for this because we're probably introducing Tim to a pretty wide audience right now of people that are not familiar with your back history, and so I wanted to get some back history on you.
Sure.
And then ask some of those all important questions about business and entrepreneurship and all that wonderful stuff.
Okay.
Because being an independent business person myself, I always admire people, and I think Mika would also share the sentiment that people who have the tenacity to go out there and do what we all do, it really takes something in many different forms.
Sure.
So I'd love to get your opinion on that. And obviously, since I'm a hi-fi nut myself, I'm looking forward to waxing hi-fi with you there a little bit.
All right.
So Tim, give us a little history.
Well, how far back do you want me to go? I can start with my initial love of music and kind of the seed that brought me here. I was probably 5 or 6 years old. My mom had a hand-me-down reel-to-reel tape recorder with a mic, and she also she worked at a place that's known very well in the city of Chicago called the Old Town School of Folk Music.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was not what it is now. It was kind of a 3-room shop in Evanston on Noyes Street. And I was the 5-year-old kid that was being paid silver dollars, actual silver dollars, to run around and throw flyers under people's windshield wipers. So I was I was raised in an artistic family. My dad's an architect. He's a boat builder, wood boat builder, a avid classical music and opera fan. My mom is a landscape photographer. Very much an artistic disposition and temperament. And I was just surrounded by music all the time. Music, creative things, art stuff. Just all of the above, and wood. Learning how to read wood. Repair. My dad had a boat called a King's Cruiser, which was a solid Philippine mahogany boat that was made for the King of Sweden, and it was an albatross as far as I was concerned, as a 12-year-old, or 14-year-old or whatever, who was forced labor essentially all winter long to go through an entire boat of Philippine mahogany and have to to tweak everything. But I certainly cut my teeth and developed skills very early on, and a love and appreciation for all sorts of different types of music very early on, and including technologies. I had access to record players, reel-to-reel machines, like I just spoke of, and musical instruments, all that kind of stuff. So that's really kind of where I got the seed. And it grew from there. And again, being around all the phenomenal players that came through the Old Town School of Folk Music, even when it was just 3 rooms, was tremendous exposure as well.
So what led from that to then becoming a luthier? I mean, obviously, I can see the parallel and the evolution of that.
Sure. So fast forward to my teen years, I guess, say 13, 14 years old. Started playing guitar a little bit in high school. My mom's guitar was always around, so started with that. I was always a ravenous music fan, always interested in the technology, components, etc., speaker placement, you name it. So I found that I was spending every single moment I had either researching how musicians were making their music, because again, I was just getting into playing guitars, and so I ended up becoming an audiophile first, I guess. Before I even really knew how to play, I was taking music lessons and that kind of thing. But I got a 4-track recorder, a Tascam Porta 05 for Christmas when I was like 16 years old, maybe 15. I think I had like a Hafler 220 power amplifier and some Boston Acoustic A150 speakers and a Bob Carver, giant, preamp with holographic imaging and all that kind of stuff. And I just lived and breathed that all through high school. Always growing, always expanding, always trying new gear, always working on my own gear, just because I'm a creative kind of guy and just like working with hands and so. I went into college, was kind of floundering around a little bit, ended up going to Columbia College for recording arts. And from there went to do an apprentice shop. Perhaps still is a place called the Apprentice Shop in Spring Hill, Tennessee, which did a lot of warranty work for Gibson guitars. And I went there. They had kind of a month-long crash course where you lived, in hotel of your choice, close to the facility, and went there, kind of Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. So I did the crash course, left there with very little skills, certainly no capital to speak of whatsoever. But some ideas of how to do things, just kind of basic concepts that had been honed and taught to me while I was there. I went and started to kind of open my own business again, little skills, no capital, and just a dream and a, whatever. So there's a place in Chicago that I think it was called Smart SLV or something like that, that did mainly kind of like keyboard repair and kind of electronics repair and that kind of thing. They had a spot downtown where they had I think the remainder of a 3-month lease. They were paying somebody to just sit in this empty storefront to just check things in, and then they would ship them to their repair facility. And so they said, hey, if you want to split the rent, you can have the entire place. All you have to do is check things in for us every once in a while, So, so I thought, why not? Brought my bench into the back, etc. Hired a friend. Terrible idea, but we had a lot of fun. But just tried making a go of it. Tried reaching out to people. Went to a lot of clubs and that. Trying to kind of get people in the door. This is before the internet, so had to go talk to people and stuff like that. So again, at the end of the 3 months, I really kind of had to make a decision where to go. Again, still had very little skills, very little capital. But I had to make a decision here if I wanted to continue on with this lease. About that time, I went out to visit a buddy of mine named Chris Barnett in California, who he was a childhood friend and somebody who was very important in just exposing me to a whole lot of gear and cool things. A couple years my senior, but he had moved out there and was working with a guy by the name of Gary Brower in San Francisco. And I think he was his first employee. And I went out just to visit my buddy. And again, this is, it was the week that I had to make the decision what to do. And Chris brought me in to meet his boss and show me, Gary Brower, and show me the facility and everything else. And Gary turned around in his seat and said, "Hey, you want a job?" And I was like, "Sure." So 2 weeks later, I was living in San Francisco, literally. I drove straight through with my Parrott riding shotgun. Who incidentally was extremely tired after trying to balance in a moving car for 48 straight hours. But, so ended up there, and Gary Brower, string instrument repair, he's part of Real Guitars, and Dan Ransom was a custom builder there. So, instantly I found myself, just kind of in the sweet spot. I mean, it was working for somebody with, an incredible amount of knowledge, and very, very happy to share his knowledge with others and to kind of, move it forward. Just an incredible human being. Can't say enough about the guy. He looked the other way many times while I was kind of floundering, trying to find my way. And he did a great job with me, and I'm incredibly grateful. But was exposed to I was 21 years old, and at the bench right next to me was all the Grateful Dead guitars coming through, Jerry Garcia's guitars, Satriani was in all the, it was the who's who of people who really care about their tone and really wanted Gary Brower to be the man to do things. So I just kind of fell ass backwards into to this position. I've been very, very fortunate in my career that the stones have just kind of come out of the water, and I've just hopped aboard. So from there, did a couple of years stint there. Again, was playing lots of music, was in recording studios all the time. Gary also owned a personal studio, and there had access to Dumbles and just every. I mean, you could just check every single box of every, legendary piece of gear I was able to have my hands on or in. And after that, I was there for about little over 2 years. And, I really missed the Midwest, frankly. But I just kind of wanted to move on. So I really, really wanted to, I've always wanted to, kind of push myself and take it to the next level and, see what I can achieve. So there was an opening with an archtop maker, still alive, Bob Benedetto. who make extremely fine instruments and kind of old school traditional Italian Luthier. Super good guy. I did a stint with him for a time. Again, kind of crash course kind of thing, but started a friendship with him. He was extremely gracious in the early years of just fielding endless goofy phone calls from me wondering how to do things, etc. And I mean, he definitely earned his pay, so to speak. I did that, and then after I left there, I hung my own shingle and started doing this whole time, of course, I was doing electronics at home and building things and pedals and modifying things and all that kind of stuff, and hi-fi gear, recording, all that kind of stuff. I opened my own shop, actually borrowed some capital, had skills, and so we're getting closer. And people started to find me, and I was only building arch tops for about 6 years or so, and from there also kind of sprung my my amplifier company as well. But I was making fully acoustic archtop instruments from logs, splitting billets from there. Again, this is just in the inception of the internet. So I was finding woods, and this is before all the suppliers as well. So I was making my own tools, kind of old school kind of stuff. I was very fortunate in the spot that I was. There was an old school engineer that befriended me, who was one of the chief engineers for R.R. Donnelly. So he was making those massive printing presses, the size of airplane hangars and stuff, just incredible stuff. So he befriended me and just liked seeing a young guy coming up, and he would help me make these like absolutely incredible tools. Literally building the frickin' things out of like billet. It was awesome. So I learned machining from him. I had access to a machine shop. I had people backing in. I would do jobs for people, where I kind of really cut my teeth with amplifiers, learning kind of electric engineering. I had some collectors that had known me through either purchasing arch tops through me or from having me do restoration work for them. They had massive collections of like 1940s lap steel amps and all these completely bizarre things that they made runs of 20, 50, you name it. And it's before engineers really kind of even understood what was going on. So some of the features on these amplifiers that would come in broken didn't actually make sense by modern engineering standards, and in fact they didn't work, and I didn't know if they ever did work. But there were certainly no schematics for them, so I had people were backing their vans in because I was able to kind of do this stuff, and loading my shop, and they'd have me on retainers for 5-6 months of doing all this completely bizarre arcane things that I had to reverse engineer. I had to put myself in the headspace of what does a 1940s electrical engineer think about, and then I had to imagine what the correct way to do it would be. It was just kind of a shot in the dark. So it was a lot of me making mistakes, burning up time, but I also had people like my friend Chris Barnett, who was who, while he worked for Gary Brower with me, he also now he's doing like Metallica and Grateful Dead and all that kind of stuff. He's an excellent engineer. He and I work, we collaborate on a few things only because we have a very different way of looking at things, but they kind of mesh, But I had a pool of people to draw upon, is what I'm trying to say. And that's where I cut my teeth on that, and more so than going to engineering school, and saying, okay, this is how you do this, which doesn't always yield the most artistic design. My skill level rose to a point where, of course, I can now with the internet, etc. But I have a pretty good library of books where I can easily look up the design characteristics of tubes, circuits, etc., from the designers themselves. Find out what the safe operating parameters of X component is, whatever, and then kind of extrapolate from there, but give myself some leeway to actually be an artist. And I refer to myself as an electron sculptor. So there you go.
So you did have, or you still have, but you did at one point have a very, I think, a very fascinating career down a musical artistic path as well, as a guitarist, as I read, as I dug.
Where did you read this?
I read it on your site.
Really?
I did.
Huh.
So my question to you, regardless of if you consider it that way or not, I consider it that way, is was there a moment when you decided to go this direction versus that, or was it always this way, or did you ever feel that there was a fork in the road, or was it just naturally?
No, I never set out to be a guitarist in a band and make money at it. So I've always done all of these things. I just look at it as music,
Right.
And that is me building things. It's me operating the business on that side. It's me splitting logs. It's me listening to different electrical outlets, which is pretty dry work, making music, listening to music, reproducing music, recording music, mastering, I see it as all the same thing. I was often in bands, obviously just because I love playing music. Don't do it a whole lot these days, but love playing music, love that aspect of creativity. And as somebody who creates musical instruments and things of that ilk, I really needed kind of a bed to test all those things. So, oftentimes, I would find myself in, there's a couple of bands that I was in that we did some pretty cool stuff that I'm still proud of. Like my Dozer amplifier, for example, which is kind of my biggest and most powerful amplifier by far, was born of that project, because I just needed something that it was a duo, though we were playing with lots of loopers early on, and we would the duo would start with basically a drone going on, and then we would play. We'd make noise basically back and forth over the drones, but this was all building to the song actually starting. So it started off as kind of space music or whatever you want to call it. We tried to make it interesting, but then he'd get on the drum set, I would get on the bass, and we were the rhythm section for ourselves, which we had recorded earlier, and we would trigger all those parts as we were playing the rhythm, which was a lot of fun because we could really drive it hard and just have some fun with it, so it was that kind of stuff. So there was so much information going through my amplifier. I was playing lap steel, I had bass, I had all these different things. I needed an amplifier that could handle all of those frequencies and effortlessly reproduce them without being congested, without losing kind of the air of each instrument and its characteristics, which were intrinsically interesting.
Right.
So
I wasn't gonna ask this until later, but I feel like this actually is the perfect moment. So I just want to bring this up. I mean, I know you aside from this podcast, so obviously I'm speaking from a position where I know some stuff that we're going to introduce our audience to. You recently became a hi-fi curator and dealer. You have a very exclusive showroom in the Chicagoland area, which is by appointment only, but go check it out because it's dope. And I see the Eggleston Works begin to you back there.
Oh.
One day you're gonna see me in your shop, like with something in my coat. You're like, what's that in your coat? Nothing. Go away. It's nothing at all. But because I host another podcast regarding hi-fi and high-end audio, and we always have this discussion in the audiophile community about measurements versus music, right? Measurements versus emotions, and how there are people that very clearly separate and delineate, and then there are people that believe either that they can be conflated or it's really about the emotion. How do you feel that your guitar playing and your being so well-rounded in your viewpoint about considering this all to be music as opposed to music tech, music gear, and then music playing, right? How has that contributed to the hi-fi side of Schroeder amplification and Schroeder hi-fi? And do you feel like you have a unique perspective that you can offer anybody that comes in, whether it's to purchase an amp or whether it's to purchase a hi-fi component, because you're sort of that lightning rod point where everything meets?
Sure, of course. Yeah, and that's thank you for bringing that up. That's something that is dear to my heart, and it's also a battle, you know. First of all, I will say that I will never argue or even debate really tone, why this works, does this make a difference? Like, it's music. It should be enjoyable. You know, if somebody wants to argue, there's the door. You know, it's not what this is about. This is about like finding a common element and focusing on that. So, so to your point, or your question, I should say, I do believe that I have a unique perspective in that I have worked from, you know, literally splitting a billet and reading the grain and tap tuning an archtop guitar and taking it from pure vibration and making a purely acoustic instrument to be as fine as humanly possible. From making that to hearing what that does, focusing on that, playing that, being a player that plays that and understands how that, you know, because there's plenty of people who make instruments that don't play.
Right.
And so making that, playing the instrument, recording the instrument, and working with people, you know, pretty notable bands to develop their tone, using my instruments or not, using other instruments, you know, but again, I see it all as one big happy thing, you know. And so recording it, and I have, you know, I've been in the recording studio while these recordings have been made. I've sat next to Bob Ludwig, listening to those things be mastered, you know.
Cool.
And I am now selling the things that, you know, people come in and listen to the, you know, the instruments that I made, was recorded, was mastered, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So if somebody wants to argue with me the way it should sound or not, bring it. But, you know, I think I'm in a unique position to know just what that it sounds like. But that I digress. No arguments here. So that said, though, but what I think doesn't mean anything. Music should be for enjoyment. Period. You know, so the right tool for the job is the right tool. Period. You know, you know, as a musician and as somebody who helps people with their touring rigs and develop tones and that kind of stuff, I mean, you know, I build very, very fine, high-end things. That's not to say that is the be-all, end-all. Right. Sometimes the absolute worst amp that is a garage sale find that has a dry rotted speaker is, you know, that you bought for $39 or something, is amazing, and it's like the right tool for the job. And you know, my, you know, $6,000 amp could not compete with that on that level, you know.
Well, that, you know, that's an interesting point. I was on an audiophile post board last night because I like to silently troll people. I never comment. I just like to see. I like to take the temperature of a room full of unhappy men. Is generally how that was secretly with a glass of wine. That's how that happened.
Wow.
Truth. No, it's all coming out now. But I had a guy. No, this was very interesting. I had a guy on a post board on Facebook that's actually a very supportive audiophile community, which is very cool. And he had posted a picture of a Scott. I don't want to say the name, but y'all will figure it out. Of a tiny little mixer, a powered mixer, made by a company that starts with the letter B, and it ends with the letter R. I'm gonna leave it alone. That's all I'm gonna say. Huh? Oh wait, I can only cover my camera. I can't cover your camera. wait, everybody turn around. But what was interesting,
the mixer was upside down for the record, so
okay,
it was okay.
Great. But here's my point: was my reaction as an artist on the pro audio side was, why would you ever? But then I read his post, and he said, I'm an audiophile on a budget. I'm learning about routing things. Would this allow me to do this and that with my system? It's very modest. I just want something that'll, run the thing that that I'm trying to make here. What do you guys think? And I started writing out this really long post not about my personal feeling about that particular brand, but just saying, hey, if you would like a suggestion, might I suggest X? And then I thought, yeah, and I read the rest of the comments, and it was a room full of people that were supporting him. And I just thought, amen.
Right on.
I don't need to say right. Just right on. And I thumbs up that. I was like, hey man, that's awesome. Good find. Good for you. And then I was out, and then I secretly threw up in my mouth a little bit, but not out of judgment of him, but just my personal experience with that particular company, right? So my point is, like, everybody, you're right, everybody has a different experience, and I think also a different threshold and a different depth of their wallet.
Yeah, of course.
as well,
yeah.
right? As we know. Now I know you are in a unique position because as a chief designer for Schroeder Amplification, and the proprietor of it, you have a lot of really cool people that play through your amplifiers.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of them on your Instagram page and on your YouTube page, and I was hoping that you could, if you're allowed, they talk about you, so I don't see why you couldn't talk about them.
Sure.
If you can take us through a few of those.
Sure. First, I'd like to back up for a second and tell you so that while I have, Eggleston Works, Vigintes, and all these highfalutin things in the background, and I do love them, I love them, but I also love the very first receiver that I fell in love with music on was my older sister's. It was a Stereotech receiver, which was, the Mac, like, kind of off-brand.
Right.
Going through, funny as today, Tim, going through that receiver and, following schematics and seeing all of the mistakes they made, like literally like phase reversal, like things that you're like, But that said, that super colored, weird receiver is absolutely one of my favorite sounds. And if I listen to music on that, it's just as enjoyable as on these schmancy Vigintes behind me, or the massive Bryston 28Bs, all that kind of stuff,
Right.
Viper deck, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just all about context, and
right.
As is vinyl,
Yeah.
vinyl is all context,
For sure.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other discussion.
We won't go into that, but,
yeah.
So people that of note, I guess, kind of, you're just looking for names, or just how I kind of built relationships with these people.
No, just why they prefer Schroeder amps, and
Sure.
what is unique about. Like, for example, our friend in Humphreys McGee, he's all about Schroeder.
Sure.
Like, just singing the praises left and right, ringing the bell, wearing the sandwich board on the street. So that's like an incredible evangelist and advocate. Yeah. So that's somebody that I think our viewers would love to hear about. I know there's a few others that, of course, that are also, and they're all different genres of music too, which is what's really cool, I think.
Yeah. So I will say that I think the one thing that I can say about my amplifiers is that they're very, very, very clear, and that's not to say they're bright. It's they're, without being bright, they sit in a mix naturally. Engineers love them, and in some places, famous recording areas, which I may or may not get into, but they only want to use those because they're quiet, they're dynamic, they sit in the mix easily without having to use studio trickery or make something sound goofy or cut corners on something,
Right.
to have it fill the gap. So and what it does, it really rewards your right hand, and people aren't really used to my amps or an amp like this. To the best of my knowledge, there really isn't one like this in the musical instrument field, and it's. I'll get into the whys, but the overwhelming response is that people buy them for pedal platforms because they can hear everything, and the more they understand what is available in your right hand or left hand, or both,
Right.
People start using fewer and fewer effects. It's just a pure tone. It kind of steps out of the way with what's in your heart and what comes out the speaker. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
It's kind of flowery, but it's just the way it is, and people really appreciate that. It's just like no matter what you want to do, it just does it.
Right.
Right.
I mean, if you have the chops, But
the small caveat there.
it doesn't get in your way. How's
Right.
that? It doesn't get in your way.
Fair
So
enough.
like any fine instrument, it doesn't get in your way. I mean,
Right.
people who have guitars that are extremely well set up that fit them as a human. I mean, just in terms of physically fitting them, and everything is in the right place, and no matter what comes into their head, they can kind of coax it out of the guitar without struggling against it. This is an extension of that, and historically, amplifiers don't really do that.
Right.
And guitar players often don't really even think of their amplifier. I mean, it's people drop 10 grand on a guitar without blinking, but you save $4,000 for a handmade amplifier,
And they freak
with
out.
significantly more time and parts and materials, etc. in it, and they're like, "Are you out of your gourd?"
Right.
Until they try it.
Right.
And then my shop is often the end of the line for a lot of people who've been looking their entire lives and buying dozens and dozens and dozens of amplifiers, sometimes hundreds and hundreds of amplifiers, and this is kind of the last stop, and they have arrived. So for sounding too full of myself, I'm spectacular.
It's your company, man. I mean, you got it. If you got it, flaunt it. I have to imagine it's pretty satisfying to know that you can, get people fitted up with your amp, and it's like ends up becoming like the solution, like the go-to. Because the name that popped out obviously on your bio that I obviously gravitated towards was Jeff Beck, because when it comes to expressive guitar playing, accept no substitutes.
Sure. He uses a blister agent, which is one of my effects pedals.
Cool.
Yep.
Because I mean, hey, I tell people all the time, if you want to change your life as far as a guitar player goes, go see Jeff Beck play live, and that'll pretty much change you from start to finish.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yep.
So what's the? Oh, I'm sorry. You got a question.
No. Go ahead.
So what's the wow? I mean, what was the one name or one artist you worked with? If you can tell us, what that like said. Okay, damn, I've definitely come into my own, and definitely I'm legit.
You know what? It was Adrian Ballou.
Oh, cool.
So though he does not own one of my amplifiers, but I have an enduring story that I hope nobody takes the wrong way, including him if he's listening. But meeting him and being in his home studio and kind of walking down his hallway, I've as I've mentioned, I've been around kind of stardom, not pimping myself, just I've been around it for a long time. I'm rarely at a loss of words or kind of starstruck, but so I was the funny story is I was on my way to Tennessee, to Nashville, to his home, and so I I was emailing with him, and I was supposed to be in Nashville, and then I said, hey, I've got this window, I'd like to bring an amp by, et cetera, et cetera. And my drop dead date, I think, was like Sunday, that I had to know whether or not like I was going to to head down to Nashville from Chicago. And at this time, I had an 8-year-old son, a wife, who was working, et cetera. And so Sunday comes and goes. I don't hear from him, and I said that I was going to be there around Wednesday. So Tuesday morning, I'm sitting at my desk in my underpants, paying my bills, and I get an email. Yeah, tomorrow'd be cool. Can you still make it? And I was like, and my wife was, for some reason, I see that she's watching this. So.
Yeah. Hi, Sarah.
So
hi, Sarah. Thank you, and we're sorry.
For some reason, she was getting all my emails sent to her phone at that time.
Oh, goodness.
So she was grocery shopping, and before I even read the email myself, she said, "Are we going?" And I was
nice.
like, "Yeah." So she abandoned the cart, like came, like literally ran home. We had to get my son out of daycare. I had to get to my shop wasn't on my premises at the time. I had to get to the shop, basically get a rig together to bring, rent a car, and like all tooties down to all the way down 10-hour drive to see him, and be there at like noon, fresh and ready to put on a happy face and like get down to it. So we drive all night long. We stop outside of Nashville just so that we can crash, so that I don't walk in there like a cracked out zombie, and not that we're smoking crack. So we finally make it there. I mean, literally, as like the needle's like tick, 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 dink, and I like pull into his driveway, And he comes around the corner, and he's in his shorts eating chicken, spray painting his lawn furniture, and I mean just being a human, And so he said, hey, if you can bring the stuff around back, bring it into the studio, I'll be down in a minute. So I go down, and I'm setting everything up, and I'm sitting in his hallway, and in the hallway are all those famous hand painted guitars that you've seen, like with Zappa, and you name it. It's like it's the picture gallery, And for about 3 days, I was coming up with a very, very slick way of telling him how much he and his music have meant to me, growing up, all this kind of stuff, without sounding like I'm gushing. So I'm sitting there, and he walks in. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna say this thing and get it out of the way so we can be normal, And I turned to him and I went, "You're awesome," like that, just totally like, And he looks down at me, and you just see like this expression on his face, like, And then he's like, you can tell he's just like, all right, let's get this over with, And I was just like, oh no, I just completely landed on my face out of nowhere, just like, oh, you're awesome, So that said, I broke out my amp, and as soon as the amp came out, I became normal again. Funny how that worked. And he plugged in his main amp, and he was visibly kind of like shaken. And he said, hold on a second. And he tried his main amplifier that was his main studio amp. And he thought that it was broken. I'm not exaggerating. And so compared to mine. So yeah.
Excellent.
So the takeaway, I have two takeaways from that story. The first is that Sarah stayed married to you. Number one, well done, madam. Number two, that when your son is old enough to understand the magnitude of what happens, the story's now going to go, yeah, I got caught skipping school to go to Adrian Ballew's house. Really? How old were you? Well, I was in daycare. Yeah. But I skipped out of daycare for that, yo. And that's going to be the thing from now on.
Yep.
So I know that there's now, these are all live players, obviously, that
sure
play on your on your amplifiers. This is a crappy segue, by the way, gents, just so you know. But there is something that you are currently in stewardship of. If that is a nice, is that an appropriate way of putting it?
Wow. Yeah.
that is of note. That is not currently being used by the original artist who is no longer with us. So he's not a live person.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm really,
well played. Yeah.
I'm really hooking on straws here.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yes. Why? Thank you. Yes, I am. As a matter of fact. Funny you should bring that up.
Right.
So, or I don't know what you mean. Could you elaborate?
Right. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So yes, I find myself being the curator for a Jerry Garcia guitar. So, what is a curator of a guitar, you may ask? So it is my job. So I guess first let me explain the kind of circumstances in which this guitar kind of came back to legal ownership. So the instrument was made in the 70s, like early 70s, 70, 71, by Rick Turner when he was working for you know, what's that company that he worked for? Anybody?
You get to say it.
Drawing a blank.
You get to say it.
Alembic. Got it. So he was working for Alembic, made this instrument. I don't know if you're aware, there's one called the Peanut, which looks like a peanut, of course.
Right.
This one looks like a pretzel, hence the name pretzel. So this was made then. It was made for Jerry Garcia, given to him. Jerry played it. It's a little neck heavy. It's a 27 fret instrument.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, and it basically has no body weight whatsoever. So you know, it's a little neck heavy, and actually has some of the earliest active electronics. I mean, they're literally you know, hand wound and hand cast electronics. So very, very cool, interesting instrument. So after the 70-71 tours with Sam Cutler at the lead, they returned, and Jerry gave this instrument to Sam Cutler. Sam Cutler had it for a couple of years until I think about 76, 77. He left the country to go abroad, and he left it with another guitar player of note. What the heck's his name? You're always on my mind. Yada yada yada. Anyway, Willie Nelson. Thank you. There you go.
Oh, okay. That was a shot in the dark because.
Well done.
Yeah,
When I say Willie Nelson, I'm thinking singer before guitar player. But hey,
that's Nico against Scott. All right. And the next.
Boom.
So it was given to Willie Nelson for safekeeping.
Great choice.
And then it went missing. And you know, Alembic,
the IRS came and repossessed it way back when.
so, Alembic, every couple of years, they have documented that someone was calling and asking, like, hey, what's the story with this instrument? Is it legit? You know, and then you know, they'd kind of vanish as soon as they got the information that they needed. So it obviously traded hands in the black market a few times. There's more to the story, but I won't say. Don't want to incriminate anybody here. But anywho, so a couple of years, about 6 months ago or so, there's a fellow, Jason, we'll leave it at, in California there, a tremendous guy, and a big deadhead, and was in contact with Sam Cutler. And Sam said, hey, you know, you did such a great job on, you know, helping me sell these other items. Could you know what I'd really like to do is find that instrument that was stolen from me in 77. And Jason was like, sure, you know, I'll get right on that, you know. And like a week later, a phone call was received by Rick, the maker of the instrument, and said, "Hey, did you make this instrument?" Yada 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 yada. Gave him the contact info, all that kind of stuff, and it came back into to light that this thing was still on the planet, and it was. They reached out to the guy. Obviously, I can't say what deal was made, but it was purchased back and legally
Right.
was now Sam's again. So.
Wow.
Sam sold it to a customer of mine that I'd done some restoration work for, on Jimi Hendrix things and pieces of that nature.
Right.
So I ended up being curator. So So this is a very, very long-winded way of answering the what does curator mean. So I am responsible for kind of bringing this instrument to light, to letting people know that it exists, to sharing the history as I so eloquently just did. Obviously, I'm really good at this. Letting people know that it exists, putting it in people's hands, basically letting people experience this and bringing it back to the world.
Well, to be clear, when you're putting in people's hands, it's supervised, right? You're not just sending it
that is
off.
correct. It is
Okay.
supervised, and and I should mention not many people's hands.
Right. The correct people's hands is the point.
So,
right.
but and it's my job to have this instrument kind of be out in the world and be celebrated, because it has such a rich history,
Right.
with not only its lineage and the ownership and all that kind of stuff, but the cloak and dagger story, and it's a very early Rick Turner instrument, and Rick and I know each other from doing that band that did the thing. Anyway, moving on. Rick and I know one another, is my point. Just bring it back into the world and have it be celebrated.
Well, I know that it's presently somewhere west of the Mississippi River.
That's correct.
Somewhere in an undisclosed location, which we will not mention. But do you have a timeline as to when it will be actively back in the world again, earning its keep?
Well, I believe it's being shot right now for a reason. And then for a reason. I believe it will be back in my hands within a couple of months.
Okay.
So and at that point, if the world was normal and we were having gigs and that kind of stuff, I would be reaching out to people and asking if they wanted to have it for festivals and that kind of thing. So.
Well, would you when it's back in your hands, would we maybe be able to host you on the show again and have you
of course
share it with the world and stuff?
Yeah, of course.
Scott, what do you think? Would that be
absolutely. It's a beautiful guitar, so to not show it to everybody would be just a crying shame.
I think so.
I'm such a fan of Rick Turner's work as well. I mean, the Lindsey Buckingham guitar, it's just one of my favorites.
Yeah,
by far. So
know where they're from. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm a huge Fleetwood Mac fan. I figured that's where you were going there, but I wasn't 100%.
Sure. All right. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Cool. Awesome. Well, then we will definitely rebook you for that. Now let's talk about if we can. I don't know, Scott, if you had other questions in between, but I wanted to get a little bit more into the hi-fi side of stuff.
No, let's do a little hi-fi.
Because I know it's the gear you hear, but we didn't actually specify it was pro audio. Or not. We just said it was the gear you hear. So talk to us about Schroeder Hi-Fi and what you have coming up in the showroom right now.
I'm attracted to hi-fi for all the same reasons everybody else is. I'm an engineer, so things are fascinating to me. And I just love being around the stuff, So my goal for Schroeder Hi-Fi, first of all, I've been making things for the hi-fi arena for some time. There was a place called Audio Consultants here in Chicago, which is absolutely like the bedrock of the whole Chicagoland audiophile scene since like 1967 to 68. One of Bryston's first dealers. I mean, they're phenomenal people. Their client base is very well educated, and a pleasure to deal with. So, I took on, I was selling Bryston as a pro audio dealer because I'm in and out of studios all the time, or was at a couple months ago. When my plan for about 6 years has been to get into the hi-fi market, and audio consultants recently went out of business in December. I think December 20th or something was their last day. So, and they shared a lot of clients with me, and pretty much all of this stuff was just kind of dropped in my lap. Not to say it wasn't unwelcome. It was, I was thrilled, but as somebody who is very much human oriented, I'm the kind of guy who returns wrong phone calls, to tell people that they called the wrong number,
Right. Yeah,
so, people started calling me about, hey, my Bryston amp is doing this that I bought from somebody else 15 years ago. And I'd be like, all right, well, let me, take 4 hours and try to figure it out for you. But that just kind of cultivated, that my existing client base of about 2,000 people. And just started, kind of adding people on. And as it really started organically. A couple people came to me for 1 or 2 reasons, and since I only rep things that I know the people, the owners of the company. I like them as human beings. They're cool. There's no BS. It's like everybody's celebrating music. That's what it's all about. It's not a race to the bottom. It's not people aren't asking me my numbers every 2 days. It's just good, solid human beings celebrating together.
Sure.
So I've been extremely lucky in that. Know Jim Thompson, of course. I've been a huge fan of his work and for a long time, stemming back to when the original Andrews came out.
Oh, we should specify for those that aren't familiar. Jim Thompson runs Eggleston Works.
Yes.
Loudspeakers. So just so everybody's aware.
Of course, yeah, and really hearing what Eggleston Works speakers can do by sitting in Bob Ludwig's hot seat and hearing a surround sound system. We're in a building where they generate their own power.
Right.
Was jaw dropping, and I learn every single day from every single experience, and it's such a joy to be doing what I'm doing. And having the people that I have involved with my business, with me, friends, family, etc. So to answer your question, I'm kind of getting off track here, but I'm getting BAT Rex 3 preamp, nice. Which is stunning. I find that I don't do a whole lot of sales in kind of we'll say budget pieces. Not that I don't have them or offer them or take them just as seriously as big dollar items, but it seems that when people navigate their way towards me, they're kind of expecting me and the services and the knowledge base that I have. And I will spend, I have people that have been building systems with for 8 months, and I take it very seriously because people are saying, while you're jumping into hi-fi, that's a completely different arena. It's not. I'm doing the exact same thing that I have been for 30 years with every one of my customers, which is taking them very seriously, listening to them and their needs and their desires, not enforcing my needs and desires on top of them. Listening to what they want and need, making suggestions and helping them find the right path, So it's exactly the same thing as far as I'm concerned. It's just me, one-on-one, trying to help educate people. I love educating people, sharing stories, etc. I've been given a lot in life, and I like trying to pay that forward. So
I got a question. That's since the audiophile world requires a very good pair of ears to hear and do what you do, because I did some time with ultrasound and done a lot of hi-fi stuff, just appreciating it and also getting to know that community pretty well too. while I was there. Believe me, being at a can jam is quite an experience. Which, for those of you who don't know, it's just a big giant room of headphones, and people who love to just debate the finer points of heavy metal music played through hi-fi headphones. But that, which is perfectly fine. Not my first choice, but certainly a good one. However, working in audio with amplifiers, and then tuning, the gear that you make for the hi-fi side of things, how do you keep your ears protected? Because I think that that's something that people tend to forget, except they figure it out pretty soon after that when they start going deaf.
And hopefully not too late.
Yeah, and hopefully not too late before they can't do anything about it. But I think viewers would really like to hear your thoughts on like hearing protection, because it's not the sexiest thing to talk about, but it's definitely one of the most fundamental things if you're a musician.
Definitely. So I have been wearing hearing protection since I was a teenager.
Good man.
Yep, absolutely. And fortunately, hearing protection has gotten a lot better since I've become a teenager, with things like sensophonics and like fairly neutral, just dB reduction, that kind of thing.
Right.
Sure.
I had a pair strapped to my belt, for a couple decades. I don't necessarily do that these days. I can control the volume now.
Mm-hmm.
But when more in the pro arena, you just you have to wear hearing protection, period. Otherwise you will lose it. And I get my hearing checked regularly. Yeah.
I learned that lesson the hard way from Ted Nugent, of all people.
Yeah.
Not because I know Ted Nugent, but because I went to go see Damn Yankees back there in 1990. I still have the t-shirt somewhere. Oh. It was them and Bad Company. It was just super awesome. And I was at the Gibson, what was now called the Gibson Amphitheater, which is now the Harry Potter ride. There at Universal Studios, but it was called the Universal Amphitheater back then. That had the ceiling, and he just played as loud as you can imagine. And because he's Ted friggin' Nugent, he's going to play what he plays. I couldn't hear right for the next 3 or 4 days after that, and that was back there in 1990. So I just barely had my driver's license at that point. So I'm dating myself, but in any case, after that, I started wearing hearing protection religiously, no matter what show it was, even if it was just a jazz show or whatever, just because of that one thing. And I think definitely more people should be paying attention to that. I mean, Emiko, you play live, when things are normal, all the time. Yeah. So I'm sure that's something that's near and dear to you as well.
I have to be honest with you. I had a scare with a pair of in-ear monitors where there was a frequency spike, and so now the thing that I use no, let me correct that. The thing that I was using previous to this thing that I got, which are very, very, really, really good, basically just earplugs, I was using bar napkins, believe it or not. But you know what?
Whatever gets the job done.
Better than nothing is the point. Better than nothing.
Yeah.
And ultimately, being a band leader, why do I want to hear the rest of my band anyway? and it all about me? I don't know.
Tell that guitar player to go just, whatever.
Just turn down, man. Whatever. No. But really, I mean, hearing protection in any circumstance, you don't realize how important it is until your hearing starts to go. And I can tell you from running a hi-fi show, how many people walk into the exhibit rooms and literally whinge and moan about the highs aren't there, or it's too bassy, or it's this, or it's that, or whatever. And occasionally I'll get into it with them and I'll say, well, okay, but remember, hearing degrades over time.
That's right.
And it's a subjective, it's a physical experience. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that don't take that into consideration.
Oh.
And you can keep it from, you can't stop it from degrading, but you can sort of change the trajectory based on if you're proactive with it.
Absolutely.
No question.
Absolutely.
Bar napkins.
Yeah.
Look, it drives my wife crazy that I hear everything at my late 40s. I mean, I hear everything around the house or wherever, and it's because I take really good care of my hearing. I still do listen to loud. I still listen to loud music and everything, just like the next guy. But still, doses limited. By the way, for those of you who are not aware, Ted Nugent is completely deaf in one ear, and he's almost completely deaf in the other. So that's how much he effed up his hearing over the years of standing in front of amplifiers that are feeding back like crazy. So let that be a lesson.
Yeah.
All right, so there. I'm off my pedestal now. I'm off my.
Okay.
I got off the soapbox now. I'm sitting back on my new X stool here in the studio.
Great.
Awesome. Hey, I'm not even kidding. It's new X.
Tim, I think we found someone who's more outlandish than you are.
I heisted it from the. I borrowed it from the NAMM show booth. So.
You're not supposed to do that.
Well, they're like their biggest dealer, so they just let me hang on to it. It's in my videos, so that product placement.
That's fine.
Brand placement.
I got tons of Hammond stuff lying around.
Oh, there you go. See, I got loop chords. I got steel singers. I got Monterey vibes.
This is what happens towards the end of the show. So, Scott, I've exhausted all of my questions. I don't know if you have any final curiosities from your end.
I'm tapped. I mean, Tim, you've been this incredibly fantastic with laying it out and just letting people know what it takes to do what you do. And I think that speaks in volumes, frankly.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
it's been a real treat.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Tim Schroeder, for being our guest today on The Gear You Hear. If you want to check him out, go to schroederamplification.com, or you can find him on Facebook and Instagram as Schroeder Amplification as well, and on YouTube with Schroeder Guitar Vids, right?
I think it's Schroeder Vids.
Schroeder Vids. Yeah, I was checking it out this morning.
On Twitter, you're Timothy Schroeder.
No idea.
Okay, I think I saw that, but don't go to Twitter. Just go to Facebook or Instagram.
I've never been there,
or the website. So that's fine. And stay tuned next week. So just for all of you Gear You Hearers, if that's a word, hearers, is it a word? I don't know.
Hearers.
Normally we go every other week, but because Thanksgiving's coming up, we're gonna take off for Thanksgiving. So we'll do a show next week, same time, same place. Our guest thus far for next week is none other than the illustrious Hammond artist Steve Aguilar, who is known for his extensive pedal board setup and his sort of live sound designing, soundscaping that he does while he's performing. So stay tuned for that. You're not going to want to miss it. Tim Schroeder has a question.
I should point out that there are other Schroeders in the musical instrument arena. There is a Schroeder bass cabinets.
Oh, right.
Who is not me. There is also a Jason Z Schroeder who makes lovely guitars, but they're not mine. So anybody searching for Schroeder, they might come across things that are not me. So.
Right. But seeing as we've set out your website and they've seen your face and they know your first name is Tim, I'm going to guess that they won't mistake Jason Schroeder for you.
Hope so.
I could be wrong, but I like to have faith in the level of awareness of our audience as a rule. But thank you for clarifying that.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
All right, we're all getting punchy here, folks. So
knowledge is power.
Oh my gosh! All right, on behalf of Scott the Pedal Guy and myself, we thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned next week when our guest is Steve Aguilar and Tim Schroeder. Everybody go check him out. SchroederAmplification.com is the website. And feel free to, if you guys missed this and are catching it on the replay and you have questions for Tim, feel free to type them in the comment section. We will make sure that he gets them. Or if you find his contact information legally and on the website, go ahead and contact him directly. Oh, Sonia says you make some very nice looking amps, Tim. Thumbs up.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you, Sonia.
Sonia is a regular viewer that we have here. So
yeah, one of my regular viewers on YouTube. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent taste.
on all fronts, she certainly does.
All right.
Anyway, so thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.